This week on Yu-Gi-Oh!, having finished the ride of filler, Yugi and his friends come upon the murderer's mansion. Ooh. At least now I know that I'm recovered from my cold at least well enough that my voice can do that again, so that's something. We get one of the sillier out-of-context Yu-Gi-Oh! Scenes here, where Yugi gets a feeling through his cards, or I guess in this context still Sugoroku's cards, that Sugoroku is not doing well. He's in critical condition. This harkens back to something we saw in the initial appearance of the Duel Monsters card game as well, that a person's cards can become a reflection of their heart, almost an extension of themselves. These are Sugoroku's cards. They're connected to his heart, to his soul in other terms. And so either because he's also close to Sugoroku or because he has magic powers, Yugi is able to, through those cards, sense Sugoroku's condition. This isn't completely in line with the entirety of Yu-Gi-Oh's lore. As I mentioned back in that initial appearance of Duel Monsters, it's eventually kinda half retconned that each card just has a heart of its own, and that the cards can form bonds with the heart of the person who wields them. But it still makes sense that along that bond, Yugi would be able to sense Sugoroku's condition, so it still works. So in context, this scene makes perfect sense, and it actually works to amp up the drama. It's just that out of context, or when you're not thinking about the context, it just slaps you in the face with how silly it is. Regardless, though, of how silly it may be, Yugi's words resonate with his friends. And we even get another really cool scene of Honda justifying why he's here, when he takes charge and kicks in the door of the murderer's mansion on his own, and the others are silhouetted behind him, showing the solidarity of their group. They go inside, and the door auto-shuts behind them, recreating that old horror movie cliché. Yugi finds a note attached to a suit of armor in the entry hall of the mansion, and then a hologram of Kaiba appears using the same holographic technology he uses to recreate the realistic Duel Monsters from Yugi's Shadow game, and explains to them the rules. The mansion itself is themed after an actual murderer, a guy called Chopman, who's sort of a real-life Jason Voorhees slasher movie villain type. He murdered a bunch of kids and got away before the police could catch him. But because, as Kaiba puts it, cruelty is appreciated at Kaiba Corporation, the Chopman was hired to oversee this theme park attraction, suggesting that Kaiba intended to kill anyone who went on this ride? The goal of the game is to escape the mansion, moving forward through it rather than going back, obviously. And the only way to do that is to participate in a game where each member of the four-person party sticks their arm through a hole in the wall. Each hole is numbered, but the numbers are not sequential. And, of course, once they stick their hands into these holes, they're cuffed in place, unable to move, and it's revealed that after a period of time, a guillotine will drop and sever their hands from their arms. And it's striking to me that that's not even the most messed up thing that I've had to describe when reviewing these chapters. This is, of course, a game, though, so they can win it. Behind each hole is a button, and while 3 of those buttons will drop the guillotine immediately, one of them will stop the guillotine and release the cuffs, as well as open the way forward into the next section of the mansion. Because the holes are numbered with a sequence of 1s and 0s, they initially think that it might be a binary code of some sort. They discuss that for a while, but then Yugi remembers the note that he found in the entry hall. He gets it back out and examines it again. It reads blood, but he makes note that there's an extra L in the word blood, and one of the 2 L's even looks like it might be an arrow pointing down. They discuss it some more, he ponders on what this could mean, and then has a flash of inspiration and realizes that Anzu's hole number 11, is the correct one. She presses her button, the guillotine stops just in time, and they are, of course, able to progress, having solved this rather deadly puzzle. Yugi, of course, reveals how he worked it out. If you take the round shapes and the straight lines in the word blood, as it's written on the paper, so with the extra L included, and break them down, they look like a sequence of 1s and 0s. And the arrow pointing downward is in an 11, indicating that Anzu's number 11 hole was the correct one. And that's actually where I'm going to stop this review. I did hint in the previous review that I was planning to double this one up with the next one, but I am still getting over a cold, and this isn't even the last thing I need to record today, so I'm conserving energy where I can. That said, I think this is a good chapter, especially better than the previous one. While there did feel like there was a little bit of padding here when they were trying to work out the solution to the blood puzzle, it didn't feel like this entire chapter was nothing but filler. The baby was set off to the side. He didn't really get anything to do this chapter. He wasn't shoehorned into the story, and he didn't steal focus away from any of the main characters, so Honestly, I didn't mind his presence here. And the puzzle itself was pretty interesting. I've kind of poked fun at the fact that it took him so long to solve it, especially when I think the solution's kind of obvious myself. But of course it's going to take them a little while to solve it. They're in a high-stress situation. If they fail to solve this puzzle in time, their hands will be cut off and they will be trapped in this room left to bleed out. That's pretty severe. So of course it's going to be a little more difficult for them to focus and solve the problem, but Yugi still does it. And I want to point out, this is the little Yugi, not the other Yugi. Like, it's unclear at this point whether or not they're intended to be different characters or just different facets of the same character. But knowing what we learn later, that they are distinct people. Even though the other Yugi at this point in time still considers Sugoroku his grandfather, he's not. He's the little Yugi's grandfather. So not only is it nice just getting to see the little Yugi do something, but it's nice that in this quest to defeat Kaiba with Sugoroku's cards and henceforth send strength back to Sugoroku to save him, the little Yugi gets a lot to do. It's far more satisfying, at least to me, than if the other Yugi had come out immediately and taken charge of the situation. This also does a really good job of highlighting the fact that even though the first trial was a trial of strength and athleticism, Yugi's skills, his puzzle solving and game winning skills, are going to be of use in this as well. It is worth pointing out that it's once again suspect that there were 4 holes built into the wall, suggesting that Kaiba knew that all 4 of them would be involved in this somehow, which seems impossible. But it's also worth noting that at least so far, Kaiba is more or less playing fair. Sure, he is stacking the deck against them incredibly. He's forcing them into the situation. The games are death games. He even hired mercenaries in the first game and gave Yugi's side faulty equipment. But in every scenario, no matter how severely the odds have been stacked against them, there's always been a way for them to win. Showing that at the very least, there's that kernel of good sportsmanship there. Yeah, granted, we saw in his first appearance that he is willing to cheat when he's backed into a corner, but he is still a gamer through and through, and I really appreciate that, because there's no reason why he had to make these games winnable at all. It's also a stark contrast to his little brother's attitude. Kaiba at least gives his opponent the ability to win, whereas Mokuba stacks the deck so severely that they can't. Though, all of that is offset by the fact that this chapter, called The Murderer's Mansion, a mansion that is named for an actual murderer, who is not Kaiba, who up to this point we still don't know for sure has ever murdered anyone. It is Kaiba's face that is featured with that title, reminding us that regardless of what else the story is about, Kaiba is still the real enemy here. It's all very interesting that we get so much of Kaiba's characterization in this chapter where he doesn't even feature physically, just a hologram of him. We still learn so much about him. We can still deduce so much about him. It's the main reason why, regardless of how silly these stories get, and regardless of how difficult it is for some people to take Yu-Gi-Oh! Seriously because of that, I will always argue that at the very least, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is competently written. All of that said though, as per usual guys, I'd like to know, what do you think of this chapter of Yu-Gi-Oh! If you have read it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord. Link in the description. Either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.